All right. Well, I am delighted to be here today with Ben and Joanne Brubacher. I was just reflecting on the fact that I've probably known Joanne for at least 35 years and Ben for 15 years. So they've been an important part of my life, and they just have an amazing story of the restorative nature of God and how God can restore things that the enemy has tried to steal away. And so we want to just start out by asking some further back history about marriage and how you guys kind of came together.
You know, when you get married, you have all these dreams. You're going to have the best marriage. You're going to have the best kids. You're going to parent better than your predecessors. You are just going to, that was me. I was going to have the best marriage. Well, that did not happen. And it was very devastating to me. And I argued with God. I'm like, God, this is your plan. You instituted marriage. Why would you allow this to just fade away? And I did everything in my own strength to save that marriage, and it just wasn't meant to be. So I came from a place of total devastation, totally devastated, and my dreams were just gone. They were done, gone. And I felt like my life was nothing but ashes. So I met Ben in 2005, and I was not looking for a husband, and my sister introduced me to him, much to my chagrin. I agreed to go out with him, and we went to dinner, and we opened the restaurant, and we closed it. And at the end of the night, I told him, Ben, you have my attention. And so I really started to ask God what is going on. But it took me a little while to get into the idea. But Ben's favorite saying is, he chased me and I caught him. So that is basically, I think, what happened. It was a beautiful thing.
It was very blissful. We had 2 years of marriage that seemed like a honeymoon, and we were pre-marriage counseling with a couple from Reading Dove, and I very well remember Bruce saying he has a word picture for us. And he says, I see you and Joanne going down a river, a wild river, whitewater rafting, and you're laughing all the way. And we kind of thought that's kind of cute and romantic. Little did we know the journey that God's going to put us on, because the first 2 years were very peaceful. And then in 2010, the economy started tanking. At the very time, we had a landfill, clean fill dump site that I've been working at for years, and we dumped construction debris and leftover rock, concrete. It's pretty important for a contractor to have access to dispose of things legally. At that time, nobody was grinding up wood and stumps, and so we put wood and stumps. It was permitted to put stumps and debris and wood into the landfill. It was like 4 years after we sold the business. And I got a call from the fire company saying that the landfill's burning. There's a fire, open flame in this fill area. And I went down and I just could have wept, because I knew there was heat underneath there, but this spontaneous combustion heated up the wood products underneath there, and I knew we had trouble. These you don't put out, those fires you don't put out without excavating, removing everything.
Much like the fires in Centralia that burned for decades because there was no way to get to it.
Yes, this would have burned for a long time. So after I came back from men's retreat and saw the fire, I knew I have to come up with a plan. And I had sold the business previously, so we had no equipment. And the company, Brubacher, was starting to go through some tough times because the economy tanked. And we were praying for work for the company, and we had asked people to pray. And all at once, this daunting project of excavating 1 million cubic yards of material to sort out the burning wood and the wood that's not yet burned required 8 or 10 machines, 10 or 12 men for months and months at a time. People say, well, you sold the company, didn't you have just resources you could have done this? Well, when I sold the company, I wanted to sell the company and be paid overtime so it doesn't handicap the company for cash flow. And I didn't have any places I needed to park the money. So it was on a payment plan, and it was a good way to sell the company. But now all at once, we had this disaster in front of us, and I needed to hire the equipment and the operators back. And just day after day, 6 days a week, I worked with them and excavated all that material to 90 feet deep and bring it all out of the hole and sort the wood out and re-landfill the dirt, the rocks, the concrete, and take the wood and grind it up.
Sure. So you were praying for work for the company. Little did you know that you personally would provide a large portion of it.
You got it, Daryl. You got it, Daryl. Plus the fact it was going to be borrowed money to the resources to pay for that. But God was good for the company. It was a good job for the company, steady work. Got to know the guys. In fact, one day I was videoing the fire. It was nasty. Neighbors were saying, "You'll never get that fire out." So while I was videoing this intense fire, smoke pouring out over Morgantown and ashes every day, one of the employees that was working with me said, "Why are you videotaping this fire?" I said, "I need to show my grandchildren where their parents and their grandchildren's inheritance went."
And so just so people understand, I've seen pictures and videos. We're talking about being down 80 feet in a hole. And I remember you described it like being in hell.
It was 3,000 degrees. It was that hot that concrete it pulverized the concrete. DEP was called numerous times to come out because the smoke was so bad and the neighbors were complaining, and they came out one time and the gentleman looked at me and he said, "Who told you how to remedy this situation?" I said, "I must have got a download from God." And he said, "Well, you're doing the right thing." He said, "We're not coming back out. If anybody complains, tell them to call me, but we're not coming back out because you're doing the right thing, and we applaud what you're doing."
Wow, that's amazing. So to make a long story short, the fire got put out. You tore out a lot of stumps, ground them up. People got mulch, very expensive mulch, and then you now had a whole lot more room than you did before the fire. So what happens next?
We had spent a lot of money. I said to my wife, "I don't see how we're ever going to recover. This was part of our retirement. I just don't know." We borrowed money to fix it. And I said, "I don't know how we're ever going to have the revenue from that leased property. So I don't own it. I lease it, and the landowner gets a tipping fee for every load." And I said, "I don't see how we're going to get ever."
It was devastating, and I remembered that early on in my post-divorce life, God had told me so clearly, "I am going to provide for you. I'm going to give you your retirement." I knew that God was going to provide for me. It was a word that you don't doubt. I knew that. And so as I'm paying this interest and I'm paying the bank, I would just stretch myself out on the floor of my office and say, "God, you are God. You promised. I know you will restore this." But I couldn't imagine how.
We got a phone call one day from a pipeline contractor who was doing some directional drilling and needed to get rid of some slurry, which is clay and water mixed and injected into the drill steel for lubricant, and it drills through earth or rock. And he said, "Can you take care of that mud?" I said, "I don't know. I never did." He said, I said, "How many loads do you have?" He said, "Maybe 10. He wanted to know a price, and I told him what price per gallon for the mud. And it ended up being 100 load. And we got the check, and I looked at my wife, and I said, "That was easy money. That is great." And before we were finished with that project, an environmental firm approached us and said, "We need to talk because this Mariner East pipeline is coming through the state of Pennsylvania, and we need a place to dispose of exactly what you're doing there. We'll help you get the DEP permits. We'll help you because this is exactly what we need." Thus began the journey of going through the DEP, Lancaster County, and the township and the neighbors to get approval. And then we go to a small group leaders meeting at church. And Daryl had asked the prophetic ministry team to be a part of that evening. And we were going through the approval process with DEP and the township in the middle of this neighbor dispute, and we were struggling, but Angie Lehman did not know where we were at. So Angie starts saying has this word picture of a plane taking off. I'm in the plane, I have a suit on, and the plane's full of people, and it's rising rapidly, and there's a destination somewhere, and they're gonna get there, but in the meantime, there's gonna have a lot of turbulence, but these people all have a part in this, whatever's going down. Oh, she said, I have another word picture. I see a table full of money. Ben's sitting behind the table, doling out money. Jesus is behind him, telling him where to give the money. And the pile doesn't get smaller, it just keeps on going. I got chills down my back because I thought, how can somebody that does not know our business situation be so accurate? And I started getting very encouraged that God is working at something, that this is going to work. Against all the odds that we were fighting, this is going to work. That God's hand is in this thing, and this is the beginning, because we persisted, because we did the right thing, and we cleaned the dump up, the landfill up without relying on the township. We did the right thing, and God is moving. And immediately after that, things just started falling in place. It was like unbelievable, and the trucks started rolling, and it was like it became a cash cow. It was like a marvel that God thought of an idea that I didn't. I am pretty smart when it comes to construction, but God come up with a plan.
He's even smarter.
Yes. God came up with a plan, and DEP said, nobody's ever done this before. But what you're doing here is what we like, because he said you're taking material that are coming out of the earth, and you're putting them back into beneficial use back in the earth. This is what you should do all over the state, all over the country. You should be setting up places like this.
I remember then you talking about, then all of a sudden they also started sending loads of water that you had to figure out how to get rid of and what to do with and let the solids settle out. And that was another revenue stream that came in.
We built some lagoons with heavy equipment like ponds, and the slurry was pumped into there, and the solids settled out, and we took the water and pumped the water off and spread it in farmers' fields, which we had a permit to do. But it started coming faster and faster and faster and faster, and then it started bringing solidified material, and it started bringing rocks and dirt and other materials that are generated by the pipeline, and we became the one stop, and we're supposed to be operating from 6 in the morning to 8 at night, 6 days a week. From day one when it opened, it was round the clock. It was just 24 hours a day, the trucks were rolling in, and they would make these comments. They said, there's something about coming to B&B Reclamation that's very different. What is it? Well, it's always clean and friendly, user-friendly, but there's a peace and a quietness in this place.
And you got the opportunity to share, I remember, with several truck drivers over the years. Do you have any of those stories that come to mind?
A recent story would be a guy was complaining about his hernia, and he was only given so much time off work, and he was complaining about his pain and stuff in the hernia. I said, I'll pray for you that you be able to recover in that week's time from the surgery, that you can go back driving truck. I will pray for you. And a week later, he was there. He said, your prayers really work. But day after day, I could spread a good word. I meet these drivers from all over at the gate, and they get to know me, and I get to hear their stories. They want to talk about what's happening, and so you get to minister to them from a moral standpoint, but also talk about the peace of God and the love of God and why this place is special, so they don't think it's just me.
Yeah, I also like going back to that prophetic word about the table full of money and you doling it out. I recall you talking about how this whole thing, and it's not just a blessing to you, but I remember there was a guy that has a hauling company that you're able to, he's hauling this water and spreading it on fields, I believe. Is that right? There was a guy that you were able to bless, a neighbor there.
Well, you also...
And the farmers too, I believe.
Yeah, that's the people who are on that plane are all the vendors that we surround ourselves with, people who have trucks, people who take the water. We rent equipment from the old Brubachers, the company I used to have, and there's just a lot of supplies that come and go. And so everybody, they're on the plane. And yes, the water was at first hauled off with a big spreader and tractor to farmers' fields, but that was limited to weather conditions. And so the neighbor and I decided to get together and put a pipeline. He has a big farm with an irrigation system on, and went to the township, got approvals for that, and that ended up being a huge, huge blessing to that farmer, and still is. Yesterday, January 27th, what it was, they irrigated 300,000 gallons of water in the middle of January because the pond was full.
Wow, isn't that amazing? A farmer's probably making more money dispersing water than he is growing corn, and that was never on his radar. He had no idea something like this would ever happen.
He's on the plane.
Yeah,
he's and a very cheerful, in fact, thanked me over and over again for including him. And so the list of people that are blessed by this is so far reaching. Someday I'm going to make a list of all the people that I think that were on the plane.
Well, I'll tell you another thing is I know that you're a generous person as it relates to sowing into the kingdom. So the kingdom of God is being blessed financially as well. That picture of the table full of money, some people might get the wrong idea that somehow is materialism or greediness or whatever. Just exactly the opposite. It's the opportunity for you, a couple God has found faithful to be given these resources. Obviously, if he didn't see you as faithful, these resources wouldn't have come. And you were able to take these resources, bless neighbors, bless vendors, bless the kingdom, and it's just an amazing picture of what God can do.
We just feel so honored and humbled, actually. It's just totally a miracle. And just like I talked earlier about how God restored me personally and emotionally and spiritually, it's the same way with B&B. It was totally burned down. Nothing. I mean, we were in the red, and God brought it back, and it was only Him, and it just was totally exhilarating to watch. I'll never forget the first night. We had like 40 trucks coming in the night, and Ben and I were so excited that we went down there at night just to watch the trucks come in, and we were just so grateful. But God is just amazing to do way above and beyond what we could ever ask or think, and He is a God of redemption and restoration. That's who He is.